Welp, there goes my upload schedule. Attack on Franchise, or Attack on Titan, whatever you prefer, is a two-part movie directed by Shinji Higuchi, or however you're supposed to pronounce it, who has made big hits such as Neon Genesis, Evangelion, and The Sinking of Japan. Don't ask me what those are about, I honestly have no idea. The first part to this movie made around 30 million, and the second only cutting in half with around 15, and this is for good reason. Now you might be wondering why I'm making a video on a movie that came out 2 years ago. Well, recently I decided to go back and take a look at how much of a train wreck this movie was, and I thought it would make for an interesting video. Anyway, if you thought the legendary Suicide Squad was bad, yes, Suicide Squad, wait till you see this confusing mess of a movie. I'd honestly have to say this is probably one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of bad movies. So the main story behind the whole Attack on Titan franchise is that these large genderless beings called Titans started appearing out of nowhere about 100 years ago. They started devouring the human race with no end, and the remaining survivors built 3 walls to keep the Titans out: Wall Maria, Rose, and Cena, as a last attempt for survival. This allowed them a short while of peace, which then leads on to the main plot of this movie. Now let's get into the main problems with this movie. The first one being that there is literally no introduction to any of the characters. At least with Suicide Squad there was some sort of backstory, but those who have never seen the anime or read the manga and just saw it somewhere and thought it would be worth a watch would be left clueless as to who on earth any of them are, just because none of it's explained, which is a fatal flaw to a movie, because the viewer can't get a connection with any of the characters because they have no idea who any of them are. Like when I was watching it, I honestly couldn't care less who got eaten because no one had any meaning to me. I mean, Suicide Squad is nothing on this movie. At least they gave some sort of backstory or explanation on why any of them were there. This just felt pointless and rushed, which adds to the many reasons why I don't like this movie. The script for this movie felt like a terrible remake of the first series of the anime and manga. If you look, it's practically the same. The only difference is that it's live action, and overall it feels very rushed. They missed a lot of the main story out, which I'm guessing was so they could try and push it out a lot quicker, rather than make a decent movie. As for the CGI in this movie, I would have to say it feels very underwhelming. As the Titans are the main part of the CGI, I would have to say that they're probably one of the worst parts about it. They look very out of place and overcomplicated, and one part that doesn't make sense is that some of them have massive cuts in them, which makes no sense because as it states in the main story, they have the ability to heal themselves, so they wouldn't have any damage on them. I honestly think they should have gone for a more simple approach that would look good but still have the simplistic features like the ones from the anime and manga, which in my opinion look a lot more threatening than the ones from the live action. Now if I could change this movie, I would split it up into 3 parts so it's spread out and could be filled with a lot more story and makes so much more sense to those watching. The first one could introduce the characters like Eren, Mikasa, and Armin, so they actually have some importance in the movie. I would also give some background story about the Titans and have the Colossal Titan at the end of the movie so it ends with a cliffhanger, and that way people are kept interested to see the next one. Now the second part could have the Titans break through the wall and start to rain havoc across the city, then start to introduce the characters joining the military and show them being trained to become soldiers, which was a big part that they missed out in the main movie, because the way they portrayed it is more just coming off as, oh, they're soldiers now. The ending to that could include Eren being able to change into his Titan form, which could lead to him starting to finish off the Titans like they had in the end of the first movie and halfway through the TV show. Now the third part could then have the humans being skeptical about his abilities, questioning whether or not to trust him. Maybe then having some sort of resolution to the Titan problem instead of just having the objective to put a bomb in a hole, which isn't that interesting in the slightest and not enough to make a decent movie out of. As for the actors in this movie, I honestly think they could have picked a better cast. Their performance wasn't necessarily terrible, they just seem to over-exaggerate everything they do, possibly to make it seem closer to the way the anime characters act, but it comes out awkward because they're real people. But one thing that also didn't make sense was that pretty much all the actors were Japanese, even though in the TV show they come from all different backgrounds, which really made it a lot more diverse and interesting to watch. Surprisingly, this movie got a 5.1 on IMDb and a 55% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I think they were being kind considering the amount of negative reviews surrounding this movie. Now if you were a fan of the anime or manga, I probably wouldn't recommend you see this movie unless you have little to no expectations when watching it. After watching this a few times, I personally would give this a 3 out of 10 at best, just taking in all the factors I suggested earlier. I'd like to take this last part of the video to update you guys on what's going on and why I haven't been uploading, and the straight answer is that I've honestly been pretty unmotivated as a whole, and you shouldn't really expect any sort of upload schedule. I'll just upload when I have something. That's all I had to say about this wasted potential of a movie. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.